Well, the ANC wants answers on whether its Secretary General Magashule helped start a rival party. The party in question is the African Transformation Movement, which won 2 National Assembly seats in the election. The ANC Women's League, meanwhile, is defending Magashule until the probe is actually completed. To discuss this, we've got political analyst Sanusha Naidu, who joins me via Skype. Now, Sanusha, it is quite an interesting one when, in a predicament that the Secretary General finds himself, not for the first time. Obviously, he's been implicated in other issues around the Deputy President David Mabuza before. But this now with the African Transformation Movement, what does it mean for the ANC and the Secretary General?
Good evening, Faith. Yes, indeed. I think the Secretary General has always been, in terms of the controversies that seem to follow him or seem to basically enshroud him, it doesn't seem to go away. And obviously this comes quite interestingly, if you think about it, not for the first time that there's been questions raised around the role that the Secretary General had played. There were, in fact, before the elections, media reports suggesting that the Secretary General had played a role in the formation of the African Transformation Movement. There's been questions around what kind of role that is that he played, and of course, to what extent does he have a particular interest within that party, as some media suggestions have been that it's about trying to find an alternative to the ANC, particularly in a province like KZN. There have been also allegations that it's linked to the former President Zuma. But I think for now, it comes quite interestingly after the whole issue regarding the Secretary General's press conference last week following the NEC meeting of the party, the way in which that imploded with regard to the markets and the whole question around the Reserve Bank mandate, and of course the quantitative easing debate with regard to whether as a country we print more money. And of course, I think this again kind of shows how fractious the party is in terms of what it must be like in Luthuli House at the moment.
Now, Sanusha, you've mentioned a very interesting point because obviously issues around the formation of the ATM were actually given to the NEC before the election. So before May 8th, that information around the African Transformation Movement was actually handed over to the leadership of the African National Congress, which means that the ANC has known about it for a long period of time. Is it not ironic then that this information comes out into the public spectrum, into the fold, including a source from the National Working Committee speaking about how, there is this investigation that's been going on at the back of the very same comments that were shared by the Secretary General regarding the Reserve Bank? In other words, what I'm asking is somebody playing politics here to try to silence the Secretary General around this time?
I think, Faith, there's 2 dimensions to this. The first one is, if indeed the party had known, there were reports given to them about this kind of formation and the role that the Secretary General had allegedly played. Obviously, it came at a time when the party could not afford, in the context of what has happened after the election and its electoral footprint and what it has won as an election outcome, couldn't afford to investigate that. But it comes quite interestingly now in terms of putting together a committee that's going to investigate this, led by the former President Kgalema Motlanthe, and in terms of that, I think it kind of tells you how messy these politics are and how much of these politics that are played out, whether it's in factions or whether it's in networks and patronage networks, and of course in terms of how it must be a nightmare to be in Luthuli House, not knowing which side of the floor you should be thinking about. In terms of what you are asking, I think you can basically just say, this is what happens when you end up in a situation that we are currently in, where it's an uncertain future for any kind of political party, particularly the ANC, given what has been happening over the last several months.
Now, at the back of that, of course, we've got statements that are coming in from sources. Isn't it funny about how these sources are always in the shadows? Well, sources have been understood to say that, in fact, when it comes to this matter around the Secretary General, that he is aware of that, and in fact, it was the NEC as well as the Secretary General that actually approved for this investigation to take place in the hope to clear his name.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You're right. You know, there's always somebody that comes out in the shadows, and that's what's so interesting about politics. There's always the shadows that you have to worry about, because it's there that a lot of the interesting dynamics start to unfold. But it's definitely one in which you are seeing perhaps the different ways in which people are trying and say, well, here's a commission, it's going to happen. We want to actually deal with this in a much more concrete way. But at the same time, the others are saying, well, the Secretary General has given his blessing or has endorsed it. So again, I think, we're seeing these politics that have been, this kind of politicking that has come out within the party over and over again, coming to the fore. It happened in the run-up to Nasrec. It's happened in the run-up to the elections. It's happening continuously, and there's always somebody that has intimate knowledge or is very close to the source base that is suddenly coming out and saying this is how it plays itself out. And I think this again is something that I would like to see with this committee, not just talking about it in a theoretical way, but actually giving it some kind of credibility and enforcing the rules and maybe some kind of sanctioning power.
Suresh, we're going to leave it there for this evening, but thanks all for joining us on Newsnight, shedding some light into that issue around the Secretary General of the African National Congress, Magashule, analyst Sunusha Naidu.